experience the full power of the dark side. Good!
We will deal with your rebel friends soon enough.
What the?
Lisa back! Prepare to fire! Oh no!
Hello and welcome back to Star Wars Beyond the Stars for episode number 30, recorded on Wednesday, April 22nd, 2015. I'm your host, Fred, aka Sith Lord Corv. And joining me tonight, out of the refresher, Agent Olan.
Hello, Fred. Hello, everyone. Twitch, Hitbox, YouTube. What is going on? And as always, greetings from Imperial Intelligence and the Intelligence Refresher.
Finally jimmied your way out of there, huh?
Yes, because ours actually has a jacuzzi.
Well, I'm glad to see you didn't have any trouble with us keeping you locked in there last episode. And also joining us is Captain Kimbray.
Next time I'm going to put a chair underneath the door handle. I'm going to wedge it in there. Oh no, you're not coming out.
Door handle? All of our doors slide.
Whatever.
You can find out more about our show at StarWarsBeyond.com. We're available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and SWTORnetwork.com. You can like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/StarWarsBeyondPodcast. You can tweet us at StarWarsBeyond, and our usual record time is Wednesday nights at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at twitch.tv/NoSHTGaming or hitbox.tv/StarWarsBeyond in the event that Twitch is not cooperating. And Paige, what's coming up in the Captain's Log tonight?
Coming up in the Captain's Log, we're going to install some door handles. No? Okay. Our last week in game, SWTOR Cantina event recap by Lou, Agent Olan's intelligence report where Lou will present Force Powers Part 8, plus the weekly winner of the Agent Star Wars Trivia Question of the Week and your feedback in our community holo feed.
Normally in this part we would have something quick to mention, but as it was just recently passed, we had the Star Wars Celebration weekend, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and as Inigo Montoya would say, there's too much. We'll sum up later.
Yeah, and on the official forums, there's only been like 3 posts from BioWare since they've been back. So we got to give them about another week to start communicating with us again. Because if they just came back on Wednesday, that only leaves Thursday as their only other work day that week. So let's just go ahead and plow right into the Captain's Log. Paige, what'd you do over the last week?
Well, last week, when it was just Fred and I talked about how I was going to work on my trade skills. Guess what? I didn't do it. Not once. I didn't even open the window to look at the stuff. I did think about opening the window, but then I was like, I'm not going to do it. I just can't do it. It's just one of those things. I work for a living already. I don't want to hear it. So,
I don't do a second job online.
Yeah. I'm like, no. So I suppose I'm just going to have to beat those credits out of Fred to fund all the things that I need but can't afford because he owes me so much money.
But it's so easy. You make other people work for you in SWTOR.
No.
Go out there and get me this.
Like, go find me a box and open it. Hey, look, money, but I paid you to go out there. No.
True. Treek,
So-
go out there and get me something.
Treek, we need toilet paper.
Lou, did you use the last roll?
I don't know. I used the 3 shells. What are you talking about?
Quick, look inside ID 10T, see if we have an extra pack.
I wonder who'll get that reference.
You guys. And then I did my usual happy PvP fun time and lost every single match. Every single match. I'm starting to think that maybe I need to do PvE in SWTOR and take my PvP game elsewhere.
Every match?
Every match. There weren't that many of them because the queues were so long. I was like, you know what? No.
To be fair, I didn't play any with her over the last week, so that explains that.
Oh, so she had no healer. That's great, man. Thanks.
I'm the healer.
Oh, it's right. You're on your operative.
She had nobody to take damage or deal any.
That's just it. Like, there's no one I could be like, hey, hang out with me. I'll take care of you. You take care of me. And then we'll wreck this place. Everyone's like, well, I'm going to go fight in the road. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Oh, look at that. I got ganked. I hate it.
Yeah, she's over there. Come on, PvP with me. And I'm like, nope, I'm trying to level up my level 9 character.
My level 9.
I just became a sniper. I'm heading to Droman Koth. Come on, I keep getting killed. Well, that's too bad.
Oh, man.
Fred is a turd.
So, Lou, what have you been up to over the last couple of weeks?
Well, the past week, they're pretty busy real life stuff, so I barely had any time to play at all. And the time before that, all I was focusing on was just my low level characters, just to build them up. And obviously, since, well, as we know, we'll expand on this later on. Since we do know that, at least for subs, full-time XP is coming back for the class story. So right now, I'm figuring, you know what? I am probably going to switch focus, from this week forward, and go back to my level 60s, and just go back to doing the dailies, doing whatever flash points I can, going back to the the gear grind to build those characters up, and wait till that stuff comes around, take advantage of it.
I'm so glad that the 12 times XP is coming back.
Yep. So am I. I'm glad they made that announcement. But as I said, I'll say that for whatever discussion points later on. So right now I'm at that point where I'll just go on to my 60s, do what I can, do the gear comparison, do the saves, pay the bills, the credits, the mods, the kits, and really curse the Jedi Covenant economy every now and then under my breath when I go to the GTN. But then again, that's the price I pay for the fact that I don't like crafting, so I refuse to do it if at all possible. If I don't absolutely have to, like I said before in past episodes, I will happily do dailies and grind for credits.
Mm-hmm.
Gold, cash, whatever the currency is, whatever game I'm playing, just to avoid the fact that, wow, you created Iron Sword +2 swordsmithing. Great. Another 200 swords. I can make this one.
Yeah. Well, if you have to do trade skills, they're a lot better in SWTOR because you can do them and not have to stand in front of the forge for hours on end.
Right, but I think the trade-off there is the fact that some of those missions do take some time. Do take time. So that's where the trade-off comes in, and that's fine. But I guess with other games, especially single-player games, where you can get used to instantaneous crafting, like for example the TES games, Elder Scrolls games. If you're used to crafting in Oblivion, Skyrim, there wasn't so bad because you knew you automatically gained skill points, whatever you're doing, and you had the immediate effect of getting something you could use right off the bat, or just vendor it for the money. But yeah, that's been it for me so far. Like I said, busy, but at least now, the next few days, everything should be quiet, knock on wood. Nothing too hectic. So I should be able to get back into the swing of things.
Knock on ID Tinty.
That's right.
Well, as for myself, I spent the majority of my week focused on my Sage over on Shadowlands, the one that I'm leveling up as a DPS. And since the double XP event came back and actually stuck around for a lot more than just a weekend this time, I almost felt like I had to focus on my low-level characters and the ones that I don't feel like I want to pay attention to every aspect of the story right now. Since I already have a couple of 55 plus sages, I had no real interest in seeing the story again. I just want this guy to be level capped instantaneously so that I can have a different spec, basically. Because I don't want to keep respecing one character. I'd rather have 2 sages, have one be damage, one be heals. And it's just the tedium of getting him to the level cap. So I spent the credits. I completely unlocked the flashpoint bonus with him. I got the XP boosters that they gave him for free when he was doing class story points. And I just kept grinding KDY over and over again. Because during double XP is the only time the KDY queues pop almost instantly. Like, you're not waiting more than a minute or 2 for a pop. And I just kept grinding it over and over again. And Paige can attest to that. She was in here, I think she was playing Smite on the other computer, and I'm just sitting here grinding KDY over and over again. She's like, come on, play with me. I'm like, no, I gotta do this now. Double XP ends tonight.
I have to get to this now, otherwise it's just gonna be torture for the next few weeks.
But I got him from level 30 to almost 36, so I did all right.
Nice. Jay, I haven't done flashpoints at all in Shadowlands, just on JC, so I can't attest to how often flashpoints pop on Shadowlands. But yeah, Fred did say KDY. You just focus on that one.
I did notice too that Black Talon and Esselis are now officially considered tactical flashpoints. You can still only do them at the level ranges that are appropriate, but they show up as tacticals and don't require any type of traditional group setup.
I guess that's a nice move, because I do feel bad for new players or for people who are leveling low-level characters. And you do see that people asking for groups to run through Black Talon and the SLs. I'm like, damn. I do have someone your level I can just run it through. I've done it before, but they're still on the fleet because I was just too lazy to move them onto the, to move the Jorman Kaz over to Coruscant. Nope.
I forget now which character it was, but I do remember on one character I soloed that flashpoint at level with just my companion. And I don't think that I had any gear better than what I got on my starting planet. It was an experience, though, because that low-level flashpoint took me, almost 2 hours soloing it. Because you would do a pull, sometimes you would die, and you'd only cleared out, half the group, so you got to run back and finish the rest of them.
Right, I was going to say, because I've done that. I think I've done that once or twice, too. It's like, you know what, let me try doing this by myself.
Boss fights are where it got really interesting. Yeah, in fact, it was Black Talon, because I remember specifically that one boss. What's his face? The guy that starts antagonizing you after that. You go on the holo call with that woman. She's like, you have all of the troops you're going to get. And you could be really mean and be like, that's not true, because if I say so, you're going to grab a blaster and go in there.
Oh, that's right. It's one of the bridge officers.
Yeah, well, that boss fight that comes right after her, that guy was the one that it was like grinding my face against the pavement to try to kill him solo.
That droid?
No, it was a guy. I can't remember offhand which species he was. He's one of the commanders on the ship, and he has 2 little guys that stand behind him and heal him. I know you guys know which boss.
Yeah, I know. I have to fight in my head right now, but it's like, what the hell is his name?
I can't picture his face even.
I know exactly who you're talking about. And then if you go too far to the left, you'll pull that trash.
Yes.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know his name, though.
He was the hardest part of the whole Flashpoint solo. Every other boss fight I pretty much just stomped on. But, is what it is. I ended up getting through it, so that was an accomplishment, but I'm pretty sure I had to use every single legacy ability I had on him.
Oh, play for Commander Galil. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. That sounds about right. Let's see, and then I have a sniper and a vanguard that I've been working up separately, but I didn't really touch them during double XP because I'm trying to actually watch the stories again on them. You got characters like that you just don't want to touch when double XP rolls around.
Yeah, actually, my own sniper and my assassin. Because actually a few. My assassin, my sniper, and my juggernaut, and my guardian. Because sniper, been there. The agent story, I love watching it over and over again. I had no problem. So I literally, when I play my very first agent, my main, I feel like I'm playing it all over again, and I will literally just sit there and watch the entire scene and be, wrapped up in it like I was the first time. And the same thing with the Jedi Knight with my Juggernaut and my Guardian, because I do like the Jedi Knight and these Sith Warrior storylines too. I like them a lot, and I do like the interactions. So I do look forward to watching the stories and watching those cutscenes over and over again, because I like the storyline, so I have no problems doing it. And so when stuff like this comes around, I don't like rushing through it again because I relish the story that much. It's like, damn. It's like taking a sip of a fine drink. You don't want to rush it, even though you've had it before. You know what it's like. You don't care because you want to enjoy that experience all over again.
See,
that makes sense.
Part of it's that, but then the other part of it for me is I don't want all of my characters to be level capped because then that's more characters that I'm going to feel compelled to gear. You know what I mean? Like, as long as they're lower level and they're not at the level cap, I'm not like, okay, well, here's this guy that's vastly underpowered. It's like, no, I got this level 39 guy, yeah, and all of his stuff's green, but you know what? He's just fine for level 39.
It's true. The same way, how I have my 7 now. Then I get the one more going, but she's on Shadowlands. I have to get off my keister and finally get her to 60. But at least with me, at least I think I have it easy because I already have an initial set, if you can call it that, of level 60s. I have one of each advanced class that's going to be at capped. So for me, it's going to be easier since I don't have to worry about it because I can always just put my soon-to-be, my initial 8, and just put them off to the side. Because I have 7 out of the 8 already geared. Or, I'm already working towards the gearing up. So it's not the only thing I need is just time and just run the flashpoints and get in there and do it and get the gear. So when I start, I guess, working on this, I guess I'll call them a second set of 8. The other 8 advanced classes I'm going to use and try out. Yeah, for me it won't be so bad because at least I have that other 8 to fall back on. That I already know they're there.
Yeah. Well, that about wraps up what I've done over the last week. It's mainly just that one bullet point where I just focused heavy on that Sage and trying to level him up. And it got to the point where toward the end I wasn't really having fun anymore because, KDY gets mind-numbing.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But at the same
which version
time,
did I get this time?
Well, I'm just like, alright, I know this sucks, but this is the last day of double XP, so I need to try to push this guy as far as I can get him before I want to gouge my own eyes out. And that's
you go play solitaire. I need a break. I'm playing solitaire. Minesweeper.
Much. No, I just want to go out the Ord Mantell and run through that minefield.
Hey, can I participate? Good. Here, I'll put the 100 credits on me to win.
Yeah. And that's about the long and the short of it. So then, we'll go ahead and move into our discussion topic, which I'm going to hand the floor to you, Lou, because you actually watched the SWTOR Cantina event live. Well, live via stream.
Yes, I tuned into the stream. All right, for those who may not have known, this past Thursday, all through Sunday, through the weekend, all right, was the annual Star Wars celebration in Anaheim, California, which is the have-all, end-all, I guess you call it the Mardi Gras for the Star Wars universe, because that's when the IP, has their big party, their big shindig, where they reveal a lot of stuff going on for the Star Wars universe, future plans, future releases, stuff like that. And as obviously, since we have episode 7 releasing later on this year in a little over 6 months, all right, it was a big to-do, so they did have a lot of the cast there who could be there, all right? For example, just to give you an idea, I mean, I watched one of the very first streams on Saturday where they had J.J. Abrams and Kathleen Kennedy, all right? They were the show openers. And then they brought in 3 of the actors, Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, okay, one of the main pilots, I forgot his name, top of my head. All right, they were talking with them. Then obviously later on, as the show progressed, they brought in Carrie Fisher was there as well, okay, and other folks. Because later on that night, I believe Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern, that was when SWTOR had its cantina event, okay, their own live stream / cantina event, and I tuned in for that, okay. And if you haven't already had a chance to listen to it, if you want a quick down and dirty summary, there's actually a write-up on Dolphy. She has it there. She has it posted. She has all the important notes, bullet format, and some of the Q&A that was there as well. Okay, she's got all outlines, which is great. So I don't have to actually try to remember several days ago exactly what they covered. But for the most part, okay, for me, just for me, I'm going to clarify that. For me, tuning into the Cantina event, I was just a little bit disappointed with what they did, all right? Because for the most part, a lot of the information they discussed, again, my own opinion, was stuff we already knew about. Okay, if you follow TOR via Twitter, Facebook, or even on the dev blogs, the dev posts, and the dev tracker on the main website, and even Dolphy, okay, where information she's allowed to release and is put out there on her website, a lot of the stuff they discussed and hyped up were things we already knew about, okay? We knew Zayas was coming, okay, so it was no big deal. No surprise there. We knew the expansion was going, or the news content that they're focusing on was going to focus on the Emperor, because gosh, where did we leave off of with Shadow Revan? Spoiler, in case you haven't finished it, okay? The Emperor's reborn. He makes it. So now it's up to you, hero or villain, to take him on, take him down, okay? They went over a couple of things, such as one of the points they brought up here was that people enjoyed the story, all right, the SWTOR story. All right, they hyped a lot on that. They discussed, all right, the fact that the latest content released, Shadow Revan, which launched, technically last year, December, so it was last year. The player reaction to it when it released, obviously, at least for me, I enjoyed, Shadow Revan. Of course, there were some things that I don't like, or things they could, they could have improved or can improve. But for the most part, I'm happy with Shadow Revan. All right.
I just missed the skill trees.
Right. And obviously, we got the official name of this, for update 3.2, Rise the Emperor. Okay. So we got that. They talked a lot about also, the outfit designer. Okay, which, again, if you've been following TOR for the past few weeks, past couple months, you could say, or at least the past month, you already knew about the outfit designer. All right, you already had a general idea of what it did, what it does, what it's going to do. Heck, even the costs, the projected outline costs for it, we all know, or can find out within a minute of searching. Okay, they talked a lot about that. They spent some time introducing, some of the new mobs you're going to see on Zayas. One of the examples is the Monolith. All right, they did talk about that hidden Jedi, the hidden sect within the Jedi Order. All right, the Sixth Line. All right, they talked about that. They did showcase the one of the main NPCs, the actual commander of that sect. All right, they showed her character. All right, they also talked about new features they're going to introduce in the game. After hearing feedback from us, that's what they're talking about. They did bring that up a lot. After hearing from us, showing that they are listening to the feedback from us. One of the new things they're going to introduce is what they call travel made easy, to where bind points automatically unlock when you approach them. You don't have to interact with them anymore. Okay? Taxi points. The moment you land on a planet, you've got them all. All right? The quick travel cooldown is 0 now by legacy perks. So just like any legacy perk, the more you dump into it, quick travel is going to have 0 cooldown. All right? And those are the couple of things the couple of points they brought up. Okay? That they were hyped up about, that they were trying to sell, or bring to light to the community. All right, for me, I really don't care about travel made easy. All right, coming from closed beta, all right, that was one of the few things I harped on constantly, saying, why the hell do I have to unlock a taxi point when I can travel from one end of the galaxy to another? Okay, to me, that's just blatantly stupid, asinine game design. All right, this is not a fantasy type MMO to where it's like World of Warcraft or EverQuest, where you have a blank map because you don't know what Kunark looks like. You don't know, what Northrend looks like because you've never been there before. So obviously you have to discover the taxi points. But for a science fiction based game to where you can travel thousands of light years across the galaxy, you're telling me I literally have to travel from taxi point to taxi point on my mount or hot-footed? That's stupid, idiotic design.
Hey, while we're at it, why don't we make the fog of war effect just disappear from the map so we can just see the entire map from the moment we land on the planet?
Right, same thing. Same concept. Okay? To me, if you're a fantasy-based, medieval, fantasy-based game, that makes sense because you've never been there before. Okay? Science fiction-based games, I never understand that concept of why the hell is there a fog of war? I can scan entire regions of space and planets, and you're telling me I don't know exactly what's not even half a kilometer away from me?
Well, they could. I understand part of the reason for that is so that people can get the map unlocking achievements. But how about tying those achievements into the legacy system so that once you have the achievement for having explored that entire planet, that planet's just uncovered for every alt you take there after that?
No, that's actually a pretty good suggestion because that would make sense. It also tie into, again, the datacrons, making them legacy-wide, because who the hell... I certainly stopped after my 4th level 60. I stopped going after datacrons. I don't want to go after them again.
No, the ones that are like kind of on the way as you level up. And
right.
Don't do any of the out-of-the-way crazy ones.
Right, because to me, again, just the way I play, I think some of the datacrons they put in there, great, they're fun challenges, but, okay, it shouldn't be impossible. Sometimes, the very first time I played, all right, my first set of characters, my first few handful of characters, some of those took, to me, it felt like an eternity. Or, that was my game night. If I had 2-3 hours to play, that was it, because it was so effing impossible. Or just the way it was designed, it's like, you know what, this just took up my gameplay. I gotta go to bed because I gotta go to work.
Yeah, seeing what was required for some of those datacrons, I just never bothered because it wasn't worth it to me for a plus to a few stats.
Right.
There are some of those I could never get, and I'd have to give Fred help to help me get them because I just couldn't, jump on a pipe or something, or I'd always fall in a certain spot or couldn't run in a straight line or whatever. He's had to help me get those so many times.
Right. And, that's, again, those are some of the, they're going to go over, more quality of life improvements as the game progresses for this year. Again, that's something I believe that should be on the wall of crazy, and hopefully in future Cantina events they will discuss that. One of the other things they brought in was 12 times XP is coming back, all right? But for your class story, obviously. It's going to be 12 times XP for your class missions. All right?
Now, did they explain how that's coming back?
I don't remember particulars offhand, but May 4th is when it starts for subs. Okay? So when you log in May 4th, because obviously it ties in May the 4th be with you. All right. 12 times XP. If you're a sub, boom. You get that 12 times XP for all your class stories.
Oh my gosh, dude. I'm going to have so many more.
All right. And here's the kicker. All right. They did not give an end date. All they would say is it's going to be around for a long time. However long it is to them, whatever, but there's no end date.
Well, if it's just something the subscribers have access to, I appreciate that a lot more than it being in the cartel market.
Right, and that's one thing I do like from this cantina event, the fact that when they brought that in, it's like, all right, Eric said, there's no, hey guys, we don't know when it's going to end.
Pele is saying in the chat that he thinks the 12 times XP is an automatic thing. Dolphy is reporting that there's an XP remover if you want to level the standard way.
Yeah, I think it's an option. So if you don't want to, take advantage of it, because if you still, there are players who don't want to take advantage of it because they like the story and they want to level the old-fashioned way, or the regular way, I should say. You have that option. Thank you for listening, BioWare.
Yeah, we were just talking about characters that we don't touch during double XP, let alone 12 times.
Right, because when 12 times XP comes around, I definitely, those 4 classes I mentioned before aren't going to take advantage of it. So I'm glad that option's there because I'll just turn it off.
Yeah, and at the same time, I will heavily take advantage of it to shoot that Sage I got all the way up.
I was going to say, because that's what I'm going to use exactly on my Sage, my Commando.
Well, because this time around, it should work for the main story on Rishi and on Yavin 4, too.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be great. Oh, so yes.
Shoot right to level 60.
Woohoo!
All right. And a couple other things as well. Obviously, a new pet. We'll be giving out the M4 1S Astromech Droid pet is going to be given to subscribers. And as usual, you're going to get it in the mail. So look out for it then.
Oh, good. We're pushing 40 emails on every new character.
Yeah, pretty much. And folks, never make the mistake of opening those. Open them. Just don't take anything. Because remember, that first planet you're on, there's no bank.
Well, no, the trick to that is now set up your stronghold so that you have cargo hold access. Take all that stuff and just dump it in your bank and then go right back to the starter planet.
And that's what I did on my other character. Wait a minute, I have Legacy Stronghold. Hit the U key. Thank you.
Well, because pro tip, if you have enough of those titles and things that give you lore entries, it will actually level you up to level 2 just by clicking on those things out of your mailbox at level 1. Gives you a little bit of a boost.
Well, that's really neat because how fast you level on the starter planet anyway. It's not that bad.
Well, aside from the point, it's like 5 kills.
Right. Kill. I mean, if you're on Hutta, just kill 5 of the gangsters right there. When you walk out of the bar, just kill the first 5 you see. Level. Okay.
I am curious at some point to level up a character by not doing any quests and just grinding the old EQ way and see how long it would take to get to level cap.
Well, it's possible, and I'm sure someone's done the South Park make love not Warcraft equivalent, so it's probably out there. Someone's probably crunched the numbers by now. And you know what? They've probably done it to where if you're a sub, this is the number you need. If you're free to play or preferred, these are your numbers.
Well, that would be easy math to do because if you have the subscriber number, you just multiply it. You either add in a quarter or you add in 1.5 times that.
Right.
It's basic math for that because it's a straight up XP reduction there.
Yeah, exactly, and that's good, and hopefully it won't be that hard for them to calculate.
So let me ask you this, Lou. From what you saw of the Cantina event, did it seem like it was aimed toward people that were currently playing the game, or was it trying to pull in some new fans from Star Wars Celebration?
To me, this is the part where, to be fair to them, okay, even though at least to me the first half of the Cantina event to me was just a rehash of events and information I already knew, okay, but to put that in perspective, all right, the fact that I am a TOR subscriber. Okay, I follow, obviously I play and follow TOR, Twitter, Facebook, and I'm on the forums. I comb the forums regularly. So, at least I consider myself a decently informed player. Okay. The way this sounded to me, okay, yes, this was an opportunity for them, and it looked like what they were trying to do was take advantage of the fact that the Star Wars community, okay, not just the TOR community. All right, let's put this in perspective. There are a lot of Star Wars fans out there that have never heard of TOR, Star Wars: The Old Republic. Okay, all right, I have a lot of friends my age who grew up with Star Wars and are Star Wars nerds just like me, but they've never heard of TOR. You know why? Because they don't play MMOs. They've played Jedi Knight. All right, they played the Dark Forces games. They played X-Wing, TIE Fighter. They played KOTOR, but they've never heard of TOR. It's like, oh, is that new? I'm like, no, it's been out for a few years. Really? Okay. And that's exactly what the kind of reaction you get. Because unless you've played KOTOR on the Xbox, okay, or on the PC, 1 and 2, all right, you really won't have any connections there if you don't follow the Star Wars universe that closely. And again, let's admit that BioWare also doesn't do a lot of marketing on its own. Okay, you're going to have a decent sized portion of the Star Wars universe they've never heard of the game. So to them, yeah, it's going to be a brand new game, and I think the way they took it is, let's just go out there and introduce the game as if it's the first time, because it's, to me, it's going to be the first time for a lot of those folks who were there, and that's how it sounded like. They were giving out information that was easy to pick up, easy to remember, all right, and that's how they sold it. Okay, that's how they presented it.
Yeah, it sounds like they were giving the elevator pitch of the most recent features that they added and what's coming down the pipe real soon.
Right, and that's stuff that they would hype up to potential fans, new potential players. Say, hey, you know what? This is our game, and these are new things we're going to come out. They're coming out later on this year. All right, they're building on that. That's those selling points. All right, which kind of explains if you were actually there, if you tuned in, all right, if you had a chance to actually read some of the comments in the chat room at the time. Yes, you were going to see frustration there in the chat because, again, if you follow the game, if you're a regular, if you're a player, whether you're free to play, preferred, sub, and you follow the game, you follow the news, it was pretty much stuff you already knew. A good deal of what they announced, what they covered in the cantina, we knew already.
Yeah, it seems like, because I was looking at people's comments following that, it seems like the majority of what people are talking about is 12 times XP, and most of it isn't people being excited. A lot of it is people that are kind of worried that it's going to make the game boring to a lot of people, and it's going to cost BioWare players in the long run.
Right. Again, that's one of the fears that they have, because obviously we've seen how 12 times XP can affect the player base. It can be both good and bad. Remember, now we have the option to turn it off because you had players who were adversely affected because even though they enjoyed having 12 times XP, a lot of them also didn't want to take advantage. They wanted the option to turn it off. Okay, which they weren't given that. So obviously you've seen players who literally left characters on the wayside because it was a class they enjoy and a story they enjoy, and they didn't want to touch it because they didn't want to shoot through the storyline.
Yeah, I remember Tio from MutiniCast had a character that he was paying attention to the story. When 12 times XP rolled around, he quit playing that character until it was over.
Exactly. He let that character alone. And that's what a lot of people did. All right? So, again, these are the selling points they brought up. And for the most part, I think it went well. I mean, if you were a brand spanking new potential player for TOR, all right, if you're a Star Wars fan but never played the game, at least to me, the way they came across was good. I mean, they were excited, they were hyped. Well, obviously because they were at Star Wars Celebration. Who wouldn't be hyped if you're a Star Wars fan? Come on. But they were excited. They were up there. They had the energy, and they were making their points. Okay, they were bringing it out there. They were selling to the crowd that was there. Okay, one of the other points they brought up was they announced a new Stronghold. Okay, if you haven't heard, it's going to be on Yavin 4. Okay, which to me...
And remember when we had this discussion, I had mentioned that they would probably either do Rishi or Yavin 4, and the first thing you said as soon as I said that was, it would contradict all the lore to be on Yavin 4.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and to me, that's still kind of doesn't make sense lore-wise, because Yavin 4, okay, if we go to, just A New Hope, if you actually read the book for A New Hope, all right, Yavin 4 is completely overrun by the jungle again, all right? All the areas, all the temples, the entire temple area that the Alliance has there for that base there, okay, they had to clear away. It took them weeks to months to clear all that area away to hide, the ships, personnel, all the material that they had there to make it an actual rebel base. All right? And at that point, at least to them, and for a lot of, the exploration, Yavin 4 is pretty much an unknown world.
Well, I gotta admit it. I'm more than slightly irritated that they went with Yavin 4 because I was ready to actually throw some of the cartel coins I've been hoarding at them to get a Rishi Stronghold.
Right, and yeah, and I agree with you. I mean, I don't mind having a new stronghold. My point of contention is, why the hell would you put on Yavin 4?
Yeah, like, I would rather have a stronghold on freaking Quest than Yavin 4.
I mean, I'm sure I wasn't the only player when you first saw Rishi. Like, this is the obvious choice to put a freaking stronghold, because both factions have a reason to be here.
We had that discussion right after the expansion came out. We all three of us wanted one on Rishi.
Right, and we weren't the only ones. I mean, I think a decent portion of the player base said the same thing. Rishi is a beautiful looking planet. Okay, and we've all seen the background of Rishi when you're actually in the city. Okay, of all the other parts of the city you can't access, but you see it's there. The rest of the city, all the other traveling, ship docking pads, other areas of built up area, buildings, housing structures, facilities that you see in the distance. That's still part of Rishi, okay, of the city, but you can't get to, obviously.
Yeah, and why don't they go ahead and put it on Yavin 4, the planet that has all the lag issues?
Well, again, see, that's one thing that's going to maybe adversely affect it. The fact that, at least for me, again, Yavin 4 is supposed to be abandoned. Okay, no one's supposed to be there, first of all. I don't know how the hell they're going to explain the stronghold there. It's like, what's the reason why there's a stronghold there?
Play. Yavin 4, come live in the Naga Sadala states.
Right, it's like, come live on a jungle world to where the Masasi had to fight tooth and nail to settle in, first of all. And they still do. Because the planet's harsher than they are. But yeah, let's put a stronghold there. Yes, I know I'm coming off negative. That's because I'm that disappointed in the fact that they put a stronghold in Yavin 4.
I'm tell you right now, I'm not going to buy that. I'd buy the one on Tatooine before I bought that.
At least Tatooine is settled. Okay. And people will say, well, Tatooine's just a dust ball. Okay, but you know what? It already has civilization on it. Well, Yavin 4 is supposed to be an abandoned Sith world that no one knows about.
Oh, it's okay. I'm sure they'll get some of the whales to buy that up.
Oh, I'm sure they will, but again, why didn't you go with the obvious choice? Rishi, beautiful looking world. Players, if they didn't love it, they really liked it. They enjoyed the theme. They enjoyed being there. Okay?
Heck, if not Rishi, what about Alderaan or pretty much any other planet but Yavin 4?
Okay, again, that's the decision they went with. Makes no sense to me, but whatever. We have a new stronghold.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll call it that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna call it what it is. Yeah, we have a new stronghold. That's great. Thank you. Not gonna buy it though. All right, it's gonna sit there like the Tatooine stronghold. I hate that planet too.
Have no interest.
Yeah.
It's not that I hate Yavin 4. It's just I don't want to live there.
Right. I don't want to live there. To me, I don't want to live there because it makes no sense for me to live there. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, lore fan. I don't want to live because there's nothing supposed to be there.
I'd rather live on Ord Mantell, and that planet's always at war.
other planets that look great that the players enjoy being on. Okay, but no, you can put us on a Dailies world. Pretty much that's it. And as Fred mentioned before, a world that does have latency issues.
Yeah. Criminy.
So I don't know how much more stressful Yavin 4 is going to become once you realize, all right, you load everyone's stronghold, all the assets that go with it. Okay, all the memory allocation that's going to have to go with it as well. It's like, wow. Unless they do something completely
we'll
different
have
with
to
it.
wait and see what they do here, because hopefully it's going to be in its own server setup there, separate from the actual planet.
Right, that's what I'm hoping for too. Kind of like how they treat the strongholds now. You just have an entranceway, or just the, using the regular portal, in-game default portal of you. Just go there.
Yeah, but aren't you normally in the planetary chat from wherever your stronghold's located?
Yes.
So I think it is connected to the planet somehow. You know how bad that's going to make things? If everybody's in a Yavin 4 stronghold while people are trying to quest and do dailies on Yavin 4, and it's on the same space.
Yeah, it could be a potential problem. It could be a potential really big latency problem for the game.
Everybody's going to be like, what did they do? Merge us with Harbinger?
You know that you're going to get the inevitable. My God, change the hamsters out by now, will you? Come on,
All
or add
right.
new ones.
Well, I think that we tackled most of the significant points from the Cantina event, and we will be breaking parts of that down a little bit more in the weeks to come, especially that Stronghold issue.
Right, and yes, there was a Q&A, folks, but again, if you haven't had a chance to actually listen to the or watch the replay of the live stream, I definitely say take a look at it and focus in as well with the Q&A. All right, because we're not going to cover that right now, but there was a Q&A session as well.
We'll take a look at the Q&A after the fact, and if there are important bullet points, we'll get that covered in next week's show. Because we'll be hurting for discussion topic news because they just gave us all of their important bullet points until something happens next month, probably. All right, so let's go ahead and move into the Star Wars recommendation of the week. Paige, what do you got for us this week?
For those actually interested in getting a look at the recommendation of the week, I will be posting a link with a photo on the Facebook wall after the show goes to iTunes. This week, we have something from Etsy.com. It is a Star Wars double-sided quilt. And the description is, this double-sided item will allow you to choose your side. Will you choose the light side and find the good in you and fight with the Rebel Alliance, or surrender to the dark side under the Galactic Empire? The size is adaptable to baby, toddler, and for lounging around on the couch whilst. I don't like that they put that in there, whilst. Anyway, on the couch whilst watching your favorite Star Wars episodes, small enough for a baby and big enough for mommy or daddy. Rebel Alliance side features a light... Oh, I thought that said light green and then saber. Sorry, my eyes are kind of crossing right now. I'm going to say that again. Rebel Alliance side features a lightsaber green double-piped edge with a black binding and lightsaber red for the Galactic Empire. It's basically a reversible handmade quilt. You can flip it one way or the other and it will have the Galactic Empire logo on one side and then I think it's the Rebel Alliance one on the other.
I don't know how I feel about this, because if you're proudly displaying your Imperial blanket, that means that you're holding the Rebel part against your body.
That's right. You're hugging the Alliance. You're secretly
the part
hugging the
you
Alliance
fart on.
Phoenix.
That's the part you fart on.
No, thank you. I will gladly crawl inside of a tauntaun to keep warm.
Right. And besides, if you've all seen the new trailer, second trailer for Force Awakens, you look in the background, you do see some banners with the Imperial logo on. Like, hey, look at that. That's a streamlined version of the Imperial banner, huh? I like that.
Did you notice that Chewbacca looked younger than ever in the trailer?
He really did.
I was going to say, that's credit to Peter Mayhew and his genes. Thank his parents.
I think he's all CGI in the new movie. Because Chewbacca looks super young, and Han Solo, well, we already discussed Han Olo last episode. He's decrepit.
Well, obviously, they're all going to show some aging because, come on, it's going to be, 30 years after Return of the Jedi, so...
Han Solo aged enough for all of them.
Yeah.
He looks really bad, especially when they make Chewbacca look that young. Like, they couldn't give him any gray fur.
Well, no, because Wookiees live a lot longer than humans. I guess for him, he's still the young years.
That's still horrible. He shouldn't be reverse aging and getting younger looking.
Well, yeah. If you try and trace back to the Han Solo adventures with those 3 novels of Han, all right, by the time you get to A New Hope, I think Han and Chewie have been best friends for at least 10, 15 years. So yeah, I mean, if Chewbacca was a young Wookiee when he became an Imperial slave, and maybe less than 50 years have passed since then, yeah, he'd probably still be younger per se if he was human. So I guess that if that's how it works. I mean, I do know Wookiees do live longer than humans, so he probably won't go at least getting that salt and pepper fur. I can call it that. Salt and pepper gray fur for another maybe 30, 40 years.
Well, remember, they threw out all of the previous stuff. If it wasn't in a movie, it's not canon. So they could have easily given Chewbacca some gray fur to match Han Solo a little bit there.
Yeah, this is true.
It just looks really jarring because you see young Chewbacca and old Harrison Ford now. Like Paige said last week, when you look at him, you don't see Han Solo. It's like, oh, Harrison Ford.
I said a lot of things last week about him.
Yeah, we got lots of emails about it that we can't include in the show.
Oh no, it was a hate mail.
Yes, you generated our first hate mail.
Yay!
Speaking of hate mail, what's going on in the intelligence report, Lou?
All right.
We got plenty of hate mail for not having one last week.
Send all hate mail to...
no SHTgaming at gmail.com.
And as always, folks, this is going to be a continuation of Force Power. This is part 8. And there's no end in sight anytime soon with Force Powers, folks. This week, we pick it up with Wall of Light. And Wall of Light was an immense manifestation of potentially destructive light side force energy, created by the focused power of a united Jedi front. When performed successfully, a Wall of Light allowed participants to effectively contain or purge the power of the dark side from a specific location, or sever an especially dangerous darksider from the Force connection. The ability was popular amongst during the Great Sith War and the Great Sith War era members of the Jedi Order, who used it to great effect against the resurgent Dark Lords of the Sith, especially Exar Kun's Sith Brotherhood, and later against the spirit of Exar Kun by the inaugural class of Luke Skywalker's Jedi Praxium. All right, the very first stories from the Jedi Order. Okay, spoiler if you haven't read those books in the EU. Okay, Luke relocates the Jedi Order to the Yavin 4 Temple, by the way. All right, and they do encounter, his students will encounter Exar Kun. All right, his Sith spirit will tempt them and try and destroy them. Okay, and this is one of the abilities that all of them manifest together and effectively purge Kun from the temple. The use of the Force to create a wall of light side energy was a Jedi's most devastating offensive ability. The technique required the collective effort of several participants to form, with considerable difficulty, an all-encompassing prison of blue energy, from which the dark side could not escape. Celestial bodies besieged by a wall of light were sterilized utterly with flames and violent weather phenomena, while wielders of the dark side found themselves completely blocked from the Force. But use of such power often brought forth unexpected and potentially catastrophic results. The victim of wall of light experienced extreme agony as their connection to the Force was interrupted, and a severance that can be made permanent at the discretion of the Jedi. Walls of light were also an effective weapon against Sith spirits. Now we go on to telekinesis, or in easier terms for us to remember, the Force pull or Force push, those powers. Or as Luke Skywalker will describe them, the power of energy over matter and mind over both. Telekinesis, abbreviated as TK, was a neutral ability that most Force sensitives had, which allowed them to manipulate physical objects with the power of Force. The ability was virtually ubiquitous among Force-sensitive individuals and organizations, though the techniques could differ greatly. It had a tremendous number of applications, both combative and utilitarian. The primary purpose of most telekinetic powers was to move objects through space. Force users could use this ability to push, pull, and lift objects, as well as to stop or redirect projectiles. It could also be used to disarm or attack opponents. It could also be used as a method of defense for the user or the target. Okay, and they break it up into a couple different categories. One of them will be movement related. Okay, and these powers are going to be used to move objects, people, and so on. They can be both used in a utility-oriented manner or as a form of attack. One of the other means is called move object. Okay, this is another grouping. This is a telekinetic ability using the Force that involves stretching out one's feelings through the Force to mentally seize an object in question, exerting one's will on it, so that it performed as the user wished. The force power functions on the theory that the force reacts to a force user's strength of will, allowing a user to apply the force with their mind to some other space or object. Okay, and one of the first powers we see with this, force pull. And this is a telekinetic ability using the force that could cause a material body to draw close to the user. The greater the user's aptitude with the force, the heavier the object that could be pulled, or the more wide arc or radius of the force wave. It could be used to pull weapons from enemies, or at higher levels of skill, could be used to pull enemies themselves closer to Jedi's lightsaber range. This power was also very useful when a chasm or hole lay between the caster and the opponent. It could also be used to pull foes to the ground. One of the most powerful uses of the ability was pulling a starship from the sky. All right, you see an example of this, and if you've read in the expanded universe, okay, Kip Duron demonstrates this ability. All right, he pulls, I believe, the Sun Crusher out from its hiding place. All right, and then a further ability is Rend. Okay, we've seen this in TOR. It's one of the abilities we got with the latest, with Shadow Revan. And Rend was a dark power that allowed the practitioner to move a single target, be it a creature or object, in two different directions simultaneously. The next power we come to is called Force Disarm. And this uses the force to pull a weapon from an opponent's grasp. Alright, the force user could then choose to have the weapon fly into his or her hand if need be. And then one of my favorites, Force Push. The most basic applications of Force Push utilize telekinetic energy to push objects away from the caster. At more powerful levels, Force Push could create a telekinetic impulse via the force, launching a concussive burst of pressurized air akin to an explosive force. Depending on the power of the user, this ability could be used to do anything from staggering a target to shattering stone. The greater the user's telekinetic aptitude, the larger the pressure differential, and thus the stronger the effect and the heavier the target. With practice, a skilled force user could increase the range and arc of the blast without lowering the average kinetic energy, creating a blanketed wave instead of a focused impulse. Truly gifted practitioners could generate a concussive blast that would radiate from them for dozens of meters in all directions, detonating with the force of a conventional explosive. Force Whirlwind. I know we all love this if you're a sorcerer. A more advanced form of Force Push, however, it's a rather feeble version of Force Wave. The Jedi, yes, Jedi, would alter the air currents around an opponent, turning it into a maelstrom. This swirling force would lift an opponent into the air, spin them around, and leave them incapable of moving out of it. This allowed the Jedi to attack without resistance. This brings us on to the next power, Force Wave. One of the most powerful forms of Force Push. This was essentially a wave of pure force energy that pulsed out from the Force user that utilized it and knocked back anything within the power's blast radius. The strength of the Force Wave was extremely potent, and its raw power was on more than one occasion described as a telekinetic explosion. It was more widespread like a wave, hence the name, and it could push multiple opponents at once. It was very useful in tight, cramped quarters when the Force user needed room to move, since Force users could damage their opponents by pushing them into the walls. It could also be used as crowd control, when overwhelming numbers of enemies immediately swarm toward the user. Using Force Wave could be used to give the Force user time to rethink their strategy and cast more Force powers. Or they could also attack fallen opponents as they are stunned. And this brings us on to Force Repulse, an extremely powerful telekinetic force power similar in function to Force Push, and perhaps more similar to Force Blow, but on a larger scale, like that of Force Wave. Force Repulse was no more or less than a gigantic telekinetic explosion. The user would concentrate in the force and violently push it outwards, creating rapidly expanding kinetic ripples in space, flinging nearby objects away at high velocity. The power only affected objects a certain distance away from the user, and therefore could be avoided by moving further away from the user. The primary difference between it and the Force Wave ability appeared to be that a repulse always functioned as a spherical explosion that radiated from the user, while a force wave typically functioned in a circular fashion. And then this brings us on to force throw. And this, again, a telekinetic ability of the force, somewhat related to force push. It just caused objects and people, if you want to be hurled toward a target at an astounding velocity. A skilled force user could throw multiple large objects simultaneously at great speed. So essentially this would be picking up an object and just flinging it at somebody else. And then this brings us on to Force Scream. Alright, Force Scream was an involuntary force exertion manifested by those whose alignment was with the dark side of the Force. It was a scream of strong frustration, rage, or grief emitted through the Force. If a Dark Jedi or Sith Lord was being beaten and frustrated by his foe, he might let out an enraged scream, amplified through the Force, that triggered shockwaves that rippled through the Force. This caused devastation to any that were unfortunate enough to be in close proximity. Like many dark side Force powers, it allowed the user to use powerful negative emotions as a weapon, albeit involuntarily in this case. The Force Scream has been called a wave of hatred, amplified and fueled by the dark side, that is capable of smashing through mental and physical defenses with ease. A number of references to Dark Jedi in Old Republic archives often mention the Dark Jedi finally losing control in the final moments of battle. Okay? And for those of you who, obviously, since you play Star Wars Old Republic, and yes, a lot of these powers have similar names, or you've seen the abilities described in TOR itself. Remember, this is coming straight from the Star Wars universe sources themselves, okay? Not just in the game context, but in the overall context of the Star Wars universe. So bear in mind that, yes, these powers may sound different or act differently from what we see in game, but keep that in mind, okay? TOR is only a small, just a part of the Star Wars universe. Alright? So even though, yes, we do see Force Scream in the game, alright, and this description sounds a lot different what it does, remember, we're playing a game. This is actually for the Star Wars universe in and of itself. And now this brings us on to Force Stun. Force Stun was a force power that could temporarily deaden the senses and perceptions of a targeted enemy, preventing most movements. It was often used when a Jedi faced a large number of opponents, or if they wished to disable an enemy long enough to flee from or apprehend them. To use the power, the Jedi would use the Force to induce them into a catatonic state. Beings or creatures with a high degree of willpower could resist the effects of this power. In addition, it was ineffective against droids and other inorganic beings. Force Stasis. This is a more potent version of Force Stun. The Jedi would use the Force to deaden the senses of an enemy, again inducing a near catatonic state, and in effect freezing that person or being in place. This power is very useful when the Force user was stuck in tight spots against a superior number of foes. And then this brings us into Stasis Field. And this is the highest level of Force Stun. Often learned and practiced by higher level Jedi Knights and Masters, this power allowed the Force user to put multiple enemies into brief, non-harmful catatonic states at one time, allowing for quick escapes or to avoid protracted confrontations against seemingly overwhelming numbers. This power could also be used to avoid combat entirely, if the wielders wish to apprehend or sneak by opponents put into stasis. Okay, you'll see this power a lot, or the variation of Force Stun, if you're familiar with the Knights of the Republic games. Okay, KOTOR 1, KOTOR 2. Alright, this is exactly, one ability you can improve with your character over time. Okay, you start with Force Stun, Stasis, and the Stasis Field. So if you've seen it heard before, that's because it comes from, or at least you've seen it manifested in those two games. And now this brings us to Force Slow. And this is a dark side force power used by Sith and Dark Jedi around 4,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, or roughly the time frame of TOR. Force Exhaustion was a variant of the power used by Jedi Guardians during the time of the Cold War and the Galactic War to gradually slow down the movement of enemies. This power clouded the target's mind, causing them to slow down both mentally and physically. It was the milder version of the three poison-inspiring force powers, the other ones being Force Affliction and Force Plague. Okay, Force Affliction, again, this is a variation of Force Slow. This worked much like a fast-acting, quote-unquote poison, quickly debilitating the target. The effects of Affliction worsen over time and may cause death if the user is strong enough in the Force. And then this ties into Force Plague. And this is the more powerful version of Force Affliction. Plague worked like a fast-acting toxin, horribly debilitating its victims. The effects of Plague continue to worsen over time. And then this brings us into an interesting particular Force power. This is called Force Weapon. Force Weapon was a Force ability that allowed the user to imbue an unpowered weapon with the Force for a period of time. By channeling energy into this weapon, it allowed the wielder to strike and do more damage than the weapon's simple appearance would suggest. As a useful side effect, a Force-imbued weapon could be used to block lightsabers without damaging the weapon. The ancient Jedi of Tython were perhaps the first to develop the ability with a Jedi Forge ceremony. Most of the users of this power were those outside the Jedi Order, many from cultures and Force traditions that were considered quite primitive, such as the Zyson Shah, who used this power to augment their disc blades, though there were some exceptions. Okay, so essentially, if you're familiar with, what's a close approximation? It's kind of like a bound weapon, all right, that you would see in if you played Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Okay, you could conjure a weapon. So essentially, what you're doing is you're encasing your weapon with Force energy, and that alone allows it to just be just as effective as a lightsaber. And then this brings us into a fun power called pyrokinesis. And just how it suggests, pyrokinesis was a Force power that allowed a Force user to manipulate and generate fire by rubbing and heating up air molecules together. And the power seemed to have two major applications: the manipulation and the generation of fire. Now, obviously, in generation, a Force user typically generated fire from already existing material. In manipulation, a Force user was capable of directing and controlling an already existing flame with relative ease. Okay, so for generation, the illustration that obviously I'm going to describe to you as best I can, it's like literally a Force user would pretty much just snap their fingers and through their force of will generate enough heat to actually create a flame in their hand, okay, or whatever surface they wanted to. And with the manipulation, they could actually then project that flame or an existing fire and literally move it from place to place according to their will. Okay? This power was neutral in nature, with both Jedi and Sith showing equal ability in its use. That would be kind of fun to have in the game. Okay, and today's last power we're going to discuss is called Malicia. Malicia was a Force technique that was used to introduce a powerful dizziness and nausea in enemies by turning their equilibrium against them. It was completely incapacitating, but caused no damage to the body, and so was not considered a dark side power. Even so, the effects of the power were sometimes so severe that it could cause a target to vomit. The principal quality of the technique was that a Force user utilizes it by transforming a target's energy rather than using their own. So pretty much, you're giving your target a case of either really, really rotten tummy ache or making them really dizzy and nauseous from too much to drink, or maybe they get car sick, air sick. But that's that's the kind of state you're inducing your target. So this concludes Part 8 of Force Powers. Next week, we're going to pick it up with Part 9 with Revitalize. And as always, I want to say thank you to the Wikipedia, StarWars.com, Force.net, and the other great Star Wars lore sites that are out there. Folks, if you enjoy the Star Wars lore as much as I do, please visit these sites, look up your favorite topics, and enjoy.
Okay, so next up is the Community Holo feed. Emails, tweets, and Facebook feedback. First up is the Lore Masters Trivia Question of the Week, where each week we're going to post a trivia question into our YouTube video version of the show. Simply go to StarWarsBeyond.com and we'll link you right to the episode. On the episode page, there will be a button you press to see the trivia question of the week. Alternatively, it'll always be after we say our goodbyes. Then shoot us an email with your answers to StarWarsBeyond@gmail.com. In the email, include your character name, your faction, and the server you play on. If there's more than one correct answer, we'll do a random drawing to win a cartel pack. Everyone that answers correctly will be entered into a drawing for a much larger prize, which we'll draw on the show every few months. You can be entered into the grand prize drawing every time that you answer correctly. And last week's winner was Mike T, aka T'Chuck of the Harbinger server. And he sent us a nice email where he says, "Hey crew, great show. My trivia answer is the Tarkin." With that out of the way, I want to say I totally agree that PvP players are being screwed. I really don't see the problem with moving comms. I am thinking about doing a server transfer, and I was wondering if you could talk more in depth about what exactly you can take over to the other server. Example, legacy perks, credits, or inventory items. Keep up the good work, T'Chuck. Harbinger server, Republic side. And when you do a character transfer, your legacy, well, if you have never played on the other server, your legacy will copy over with you. And that character that you paid to move will go, obviously. Everything in their inventory, all of their perks. Your guild will not go with you if you have a guild. If you're a guild leader, you have to reform it on the new server. The only thing that does not go with you is any strongholds that you happen to have. Those stay on the origin server with that legacy. They won't copy over.
So yes, you'll have to buy them all over again.
That's
and
right.
Unlock them all over again. And I believe too, if you're going to do server transfer, you absolutely have to make sure you have nothing outstanding on the GTN. And I believe your mail has to be clear too, like so you can't have any attachments in your mail as well. Otherwise, it won't kick through.
Yeah, it'll prompt you if there's anything you need to do, like that free transfer.
Right. Yeah, it'll definitely tell you. It won't do anything. It won't do anything at all until you actually fix it. So the great thing is it'll actually tell you what's wrong, and it's easy enough to fix. Like for me, when I first did my character transfer, I forgot I had stuff in the mail. I bought stuff on the GTN. Like, oh wait, I need to get that out of the mail. And then once I did that, everything went through. In less than 2 minutes, I actually transferred over. So,
Which, if you haven't done so already, you can have somebody. I forget which way it works, but either you can refer them or they can refer you, and you'll get a free character transfer. So you won't have to pay the 1,800 cartel coins. You only get one of those though, so use it wisely.
yes.
That's what Lou and I did. We recruited each other.
Oh, and I also think too, one of the other points to bring up is if you've already started a legacy on a server, on a destination server, and you're transferring a character from another one onto that one, I think Fred, you the new one overrides the previous one, right?
You will keep, if you have things unlocked or achievements on the other server, you'll keep them and they'll be merged together. Any achievements that you had in progress, it will be whatever number was the highest. Like if there's an achievement to kill 15 rackles, and on one server I have 9 out of 15, and the other one I have 3 out of 15, they won't add together. I'll just have 9 out of 15. It just takes whatever's the highest of the two and completely overrides the other one. So like if you have a legacy level 10 on Shadowlands, and you have a legacy level 40 on Jedi Covenant, and you move the level 40 to Shadowlands, your legacy will still be level 40. It's not going to add those 10 levels to it or anything. It just overrides it.
Right. Oh, and as Play also mentioned in chat really quick, legacy storage has to be cleared too. So you have to take stuff out of your legacy storage and put it on appropriate characters, and then make the transfer. Because legacy storage doesn't transfer over either.
Yeah, pretty much legacy storage and strongholds. Everything else will go with you. Unless it doesn't, in which case we're not responsible.
Right. We are not responsible for anything that's
Ever.
lost. Ever.
But congratulations on winning Lou's trivia question of the week.
Yes, Mike T, congratulations again for guessing that awesome super weapon of destruction, the Tarkin. Giant mega laser, which is actually the sister model to the Death Star laser. So just think of the Death Star, the first Death Star, okay? Minus the Death Star. It's just the actual laser cannon itself with big engines strapped to it, and obviously living quarters, some docking facilities, ship facilities, and that's it.
Wow, Lou, you're like Just think of the Death Star minus the Death
Death
Star.
Star.
Yeah.
Just think of the big cannon that destroyed Alderaan. And that's it. That's all it's floating out there.
Okay, Paige, what's going on in our SWTOR community?
You can check out our fellow SWTOR podcasts. Most of them are available on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at SWTORnetwork.com. ToroCast is at ToroCast.com. Corellian Run Radio is at CorellianRun.com. UntiniCast is at UntiniCast.com. SWTOR Skate Podcast is at NewOverlords.com. The Usual Podcast is at TheUsualPodcast.com. Old Republic Radio, Healing SWTOR, and MIDI Podcasts are on iTunes. And the Bad Feeling Podcast is at BadFeelingPodcast.com. Be warned, that is an explicit podcast. Also follow Madmar at SWTOR Family for the latest happenings in the SWTOR community. If you'd like to have your podcast listed on this segment, send us an email at StarWarsBeyond@gmail.com.
And real quick, I just want to mention we have been in communications about the next GGC episode. And the next community podcast is going to be coming very soon. Very, very soon, in fact.
Soon, TM.
And now I'm going to tell you how you can get a hold of us one more time. To find out more about our show at StarWarsBeyond.com. You can like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/StarWarsBeyondPodcast. You can send us an email to StarWarsBeyond@gmail.com. You can tweet us at StarWarsBeyond. I am at SithLordCorv. Lou is at GamerGuy11B. And Paige is at Asa Fiery. And now it's time for our final thoughts.
My final thought is Fred owes me money and he needs to give it back to me now.
My final thought, Star Wars Celebration just happened. A lot of great stuff for the Star Wars universe was unveiled. A lot of exciting things coming down the pipe. I can't wait for it. Obviously, even though I'm a little bit disappointed in having Stronghold, hey, it's a new Stronghold. We got new stuff coming our way. Can't wait to start tackling Rise of the Emperor. Can't wait.
And my final thought, Yavin 4 Stronghold.
Wow.
I'm going to buy that and I'm just going to stick Quinn in it. Beyond the Stars is an independently recorded fan podcast made in association with NSG Productions. And now it's time to say goodnight.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. See you all again next time.
Quinn in the Yavin 4 Stronghold.
You've served your purpose.
Beyond the Stars trivia question for the week of April 22nd, 2015. First clue. I was a world with two names. My second one arose from a new government taking refuge. Second clue. My original settlers, thousands of years ago, wanted nothing to do with the newly created Galactic Republic. Third clue. Although anti-alien in nature, my citizens knew the value of interspecies trade and banking within the galaxy. Fourth clue. My location would serve as a central meeting place for political, military, and economic reasons. Fifth clue. In the end, I would house several governments. The final one would be a lasting testament to the remnants of an empire. What am I? And as always, folks, please send your responses to StarWarsBeyond@gmail.com. In your email, please include your answer, your character name, the server you are on, the faction you play with. And as always, good luck. Looking forward to seeing your answers.